Okay, now I shall start the webinar by inviting Dr. Gerard Yi, Chairman of Charity Council, to give us his opening address. Over to you, please, Dr. Yi.
Thank you, Jensen. A very good morning to all. It is wonderful to have everyone here at this webinar, co-organized by the Center for Nonprofit Leadership, or CNPL, Council for Board Diversity, CBD, and the Charity Council. It shows the importance you place on having a strong and effective board to lead and govern your charity well. With the current disruptions to both our social and economic life in Singapore, it is of even greater importance for charities to be well governed in order to ensure continued public confidence in their good work for the community. Charities are wholly accountable to their stakeholders, be it donors, volunteers, or beneficiaries, to ensure that their funds and resources they have been entrusted with are always put to the correct and effective charitable use. The board stewards the charity and is ultimately responsible for its governance to ensure that its charity comply with all the relevant legislative requirements and that proper internal controls are put in place. A well-governed charity enjoys strong public confidence, continued support, and donations. The board must therefore safeguard the charity's finances and resources and be accountable to the public and work cohesively with the management to implement strategies that will help the charity to achieve governance excellence. How can charities have an effective board? There are three key points that contribute to building an effective board, and they are board diversity, board culture, and board renewal. Board diversity takes on many forms. In recent years, while there has been an increasing focus on gender diversity, but as I've often said, diversity should extend beyond that. A diverse board is one that comprises members with different skill sets and competencies and who come from various relevant backgrounds. As each charity is different, the selection of board members should be based on the needs of the charity. Identify what attributes, skills, and competencies are suitable and which of these are lacking in the board. Then make a conscious effort to find board members who can help plug these gaps. This will help to broaden the experience and expertise of the board and enable new ideas to be generated, preventing the risk of groupthink. You note almost every social issue has an impact on women, children, or the family in general. So it is clearly beneficial to have women's perspectives in board deliberations. Every effective board should have a culture of openness, trust, and professionalism. Members of the board should feel safe to robustly challenge ideas, remain respectful to the suggestions of others, even if it runs contrary to theirs, and at the end of the day, come to a landing point on key issues and own the financial decision made by the board collectively. For this to happen, the trust levels needs to be high and quality of relationships within the boards needs to be strong. When the board establishes the correct professional tone within itself, it also sets a living example and role model for the executive team to emulate in terms of how healthy discussions are conducted, how effective relationships should work, and how sound decisions are made. An effective board must also take a proactive approach of evaluating its own performance on a regular basis in terms of its effectiveness. We can often be blindsided, and it is therefore important to take a hard look at ourselves from time to time to ensure the boards we are in continue to remain effective and useful for the charity and its beneficiaries. Board renewal and succession is probably the most critical task that any smart board keeps in mind from day one, as this requires careful planning and implementation. We can start off by attracting and bringing in the right people to a board. However, there will come a time when board renewal is necessary. This requires maturity of thought and will, and for board members to step aside when it's time to do so as to allow fresh talents to serve for the betterment and sustained effectiveness of the charity. There must therefore be proper board renewal policies and procedures instituted so that is an unambiguous to all. Having an effective board cannot be left to chance. It must be deliberate and planned, and the search for new members done early and the net cast wide. The Charity Council and the Commissioner of Charities are committed to support you in your journey to achieve good governance in these important areas of board diversity, culture, and renewal. Since 2018, we have various shared service partners who are dedicated to help strengthen charities' regulatory compliance and effectiveness, and to ease your resource constraints. For example, CNPL is part of this initiative that provides board advisory services on how charities can strengthen capability through board renewal and succession planning, and how charities can enhance their leadership and board effectiveness. They also assist in matching board members with your charity should you lack suitable candidates. We encourage all charities to connect with CNPL and the various shared service partners for your needs. As all of you are aware, the Council introduced the revised Code of Governance for Charities and Institutions of a Public Character in 2017, which aims to make charities more effective by sharing recommended practices on how effective charities are governed and managed. This includes providing guidance to board members to help them carry out their fiduciary duties. You need to familiarize yourselves with these codes and guidelines and have a duty of the charities you sit and serve on. In areas where the charity has yet to comply or am unsure about, please do reach out to the Charity Council or the Commissioner of Charities office, and we will be more than glad to support and guide you along. Today, we see the launch of the Board Appointment Guide for Charities, which is a collaboration by CBD, EY Singapore, National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center, and the Singapore Institute of Directors. This guide aims to provide board of charities in Singapore with useful considerations for nominating and appointing board members. It is heartening to see organizations coming together to share their expertise and resources to help our charities. Charities who have difficulties finding and building up a strong board may find some useful tips in this guide. Therefore, please use this guide together with a code of governance in your journey in building an effective board and ensure good governance is upheld at all times. Building an effective board contributes not only to the well-being of the charities, but also adds to the greater public confidence. With a well-devised process in appointing, strengthening, and renewing your board, a good board can be turned into a great one. On behalf of the Charity Council, I would like to thank all of you for joining us this morning. I look forward to an enriching conversation ahead. Thank you. Over to you, Jensen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yi, for sharing your valuable time with us as well. Indeed, I'd like to echo what you have pointed out, reminding us that very importantly, trust level has to be very high within the board itself. This is very important for all of us as non-profit leaders in the sector to take note that it all starts with the board itself. So trust element has to be very high and it has to be present. So Now, let me move on to the main presentation. Today, we are also very privileged to have Ms. Teresa Goh, Governing Council Member of the Singapore Institute of Directors, who many of you have already known, and as well as Ms. Veron Wong, Partner of EY Singapore, to share with all of us about the newly launched Board Appointment Guide for Charities, which Dr. Yi has shared earlier. Before I hand over to them for the main presentation, let us all watch a video put together by the Council of Board Diversity. Arthur, can you please play the video? Thanks.
For charities to fulfill their mission and serve the community, having the right board is key. The board should be regularly refreshed to ensure that board members are aligned with the changing needs of its beneficiaries, new regulatory requirements, as well as meeting their long-term goals. So, what do we need to look for in board members? We need to look for traits and characteristics such as integrity and commitment. Consider their qualifications and ability to fit into the group. Ensuring independence and diversity on the board is also important. It will be useful to identify potential board candidates through a wide range of channels and methods, such as looking internally. You may find board candidates among your talented volunteers, or from professional networking sessions. You can also ask external board matching services for help, or seek recommendations from existing board members. Having a range of skills and experience on the board is important. This includes having a board with both women and men, young and old, and different ethnicities that reflect the communities the charity serves. There are many benefits of having a diverse board, including opening up more channels for fundraising and providing a broader range of views and solutions that help with a fuller understanding of choices and their impact on the community. This results in richer discussions and a more robust decision-making process. A diverse board also enables sharper identification of opportunities and a more effective mitigation of risks. Identifying, searching, shortlisting, appointing, inducting, training and evaluating the board is a cyclical and ongoing process in board nomination and appointment. The Board Appointment Guide for Charities contains lots of resources and tips. No matter what stage your charity is at, or even if you do not have a nominating committee, there are many valuable lessons you can take away from this guide. For charity.
Thank you, Arthur. Let me now move on to invite Ms. Teresa Goh for the first part of the presentation. Teresa, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Jensen, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for listening in. Can I call out my charts, please? All right, we've got the charts in front of us. I hope everyone can see it. I will take the next 10 minutes to present on what the guide is all about. Yeah, you will know that it takes 3 times to repeat the same message for a human being to internalize the message. So firstly, you've got Dr. Gerard Yi to tell you why board renewal is important. Secondly, you've got a video to emphasize some of the key points. And thirdly, I am also repeating some of the key takeaways so you can internalize what's important to you about board renewal, how to go about it, and how to do it well. Yes? So the first thing you want to note is the board, the look and feel of the guide itself. You will see that it's very colorful, it's very friendly, and it's very warm. Yeah, so board renewal is not a laborious and inconvenient exercise. Yes, there's quite a lot of effort that you need to put in, but after all, it is an activity that involves human beings. Yes, so go about it in a friendly and warm approach, and you will begin to look at board renewal quite differently. Now, the board appointment guide has 5 sections. I will cover section 1, which is about the role of the board, and section 2, which is how to best compose your board. What does this guide explain? The creators of the guide are cognizant that charities are at different readiness, different size, and has different profiles. So this guide is not about pushing everything down your throat. We are conscious of the fact that you have different needs and probably will respond to board renewal quite differently. Yeah, but the least we expect is that you get started. Yeah, the last CNPL board leadership survey already conveyed that 50% of charity chairs do not have a term limit, and more than 2/3 of charities, although some of them do not have a renewal policy, and some, even though you have a renewal policy, does not actually practice it. Yeah. So the guide is understanding in a sense that it caters to the foundational standards, meaning if you are a charity that's smaller and may not have the resources, you must adhere to the basic requirements of the Act, the Charities Act, as well as the Code of Governance. The guide also explains what are the gold standards. Yeah, for the larger charities, the charities with more resources, what are the best practices that you can aspire towards? I think I have a very sensitive mouse, so when I click, it just goes to board. Please excuse me for that. So for section 1, it explains the role of the board, and we nicely summarized it into 3 dimensions. Yeah, firstly, the board's job is to provide stewardship of the charity. Now, what does this mean? It really means stewarding the charitable assets of the organization to the best possible level of responsibility and optimization. And we're talking about human capital, HR capital, knowledge capital, social capital, and so on and so forth. Yeah, stewardship also requires the board to think long-term for the charity. What are the long-term directions of the charity? How do you ensure that your charity is future ready? And very importantly, how do you steady the ship internally? Yeah, so that it's ready for any uncertainties, especially with COVID. We now know that every day can be a crisis. Yeah, the stewardship is, the role of the board also covers how the board works and guides with the management of the charity. Now, especially important would be the relationship between the chair and the CEO of the organization. I would say that's one of the key relationships that boards have to focus on. And of course, between the board and the management itself. It must be a trusting relationship, but it's also a relationship that balances the duty of challenging management as well as supporting management. Yeah, so we are talking about a good balance of driving management as well as helping them to be successful. Now, the third dimension is to grow the value of the charity. Well, essentially, again, COVID has taught us that it is absolutely necessary that every dollar spent by the charity or every human resource value put to the charity must result in real value. Yeah, and by real value, we are talking about impact to the beneficiaries that we serve. And impact meaning change behaviors. It also means how can lives really be better? Yeah. So value is not just meeting your numerical KPIs. It is that, but charities must not stop there. Yeah. So if anything else, when you renew your board, you want to bring in people who think about things differently. Yeah. It's not good enough to have people come in and say, what are our KPIs? Let's work towards meeting that. Yeah. You need people who say, what's our KPI? What outcomes should we be achieving? As well as what kind of impact, real impact are we making to our beneficiaries? How to best compose your board. There are 10 steps that I will go through very, very quickly. But I really want to talk about step 0, which is not on the chat. And step 0 is the mindset and the commitment that directors bring to the charity. What is your mindset with regards to renewal and succession? Is it just a checklist for you so that you can comply with the act? It must be a lot more. You must be totally convinced about the business case for renewing your boards. And Dr. Gerard E. has mentioned upfront, what are all the benefits that the charity can gain from having a board that's diverse, a board that's not afraid to speak up, and the board that's willing to make decisions to grow the charity, even if the decisions may be out of the box. So we're talking about a board that challenges status quo. So that's step 0, and I wanted to emphasize that because by the end of our presentation, we would like you to download the guide, we'd like you to read the guide, but we also like you to call for a meeting and really talk about the business case for board renewal. Build a business case, convince everyone why it's necessary to do so, and put your heart and soul into doing it well. Okay, I'll go on to skills and experience, and this is quite self-explanatory. What's more important is you want to look at the top right-hand corner of the chart. And Ernst and Young has nicely summarized it into 4 steps. First step was sourcing, formation, continuity, and renewal. So sourcing is really about understanding what sort of skills and experience you need for the board. And this has to align with the strategy that you have created for your charity. Now, if your strategy is not clear, then this becomes unclear. And how can your strategy be clear? By getting the right people on the board. You will move towards having a strategy that's very clear and very relevant for the sector that you serve. And with clarity, you will have clarity on the skill sets and experience. Determining the board size. The average board size of charities is about 11. For the charities regulation, it mandates a minimum of 3 board members. The large charities have up to 14 members. When I was the chair of SATA, we have 12 members. That's because we catered to succession, because our average board size, we always target to be about 10, but we always have 2 on standby for renewal and succession purpose. Still under sourcing, the third one is to determine the traits and characteristics of the chair and members. So besides the functional skills, what are they like in terms of personality, in terms of their motivation, in terms of their capacity to give enough time, and in terms of their ability to speak up during board meetings. So we're talking about soft skills here. Now, CNPL has, as part of their board leadership survey, created a board competency framework. It is still very new, but something you want to work with together with this list to give a holistic view to what your board member should look like. Now, the fourth step under sourcing is about how you assure board independence. Now, board independence is absolutely important, and we understand that some of the smaller charities may not have the muscle nor the narrative to invite as many external board members as possible, and that some of your staff may have to sit on boards. And besides, the smaller charities tend to have board members who are willing to roll up their sleeves to contribute to the board. So in the case of staff members becoming board members, we have provided you some guidelines. It is important to declare potential conflicts of interest, because it's not just the charity judging you on independence, it's the general public. And public perceptions must be managed very, very well, and with total transparency in disclosure. And of course, the gold standard is refer to your conflict of interest policy and declare it faithfully every year. Now, for step 5, it's about board diversity. Yeah, we're still talking about sourcing here. And Veron will touch on who can help you to find the candidates. Board diversity is, well, the first thing you want to look at would be the visible, or what I call the conventional dimensions of diversity. Gender, ethnicity, educational level, age, these are all very visible. Yeah, but as Dr. Gerard E. has mentioned, if you want to move from a good board to a great board, you want to look at the invisible dimensions of diversity. Yeah, these are the skills, the experience, the worldview. And like I mentioned before, how do board members think about things? If there's a lot of differentiation among the board members, that is the best opportunity to basically derive the best decision out of all the differences in worldviews. Yes, of course, it takes a very experienced chair, but board renewal gives you the opportunity to find the experienced chair or to develop the experienced chair from among your promising board members. And again, I want to emphasize gender diversity. There's a big debate on women on boards in the last 5 years among the private sector. Yeah, and although the private sector takes it as a matter of fact, we in the charity sector must not do the same. I would say that women on boards, on charity boards, is mission critical for some charities, especially if you're a charity who looks after women, children, and families. Because who better to project the needs and the relevance other than women themselves? Yeah. So let's follow the example of our private sector directors and do better, yes, by being vigilant and being intentional about bringing women on our boards. For forming board committees, again, there's a foundational standards. Yeah, if you don't have the resource or your board is not big enough to form many committees, minimally, you must have an audit committee or a finance committee, and just ensure that your treasurer has a good level of independence, serving not more than 4 years. Reappointment can be considered after a lapse of at least 2 years. Now, what are the gold standards? There are many committees that you can set up. When I was chair of SATA, we had set up 7 committees. Yeah, but that's because we had the resource to do so. Okay, so that would be what I call a gold standard. I wanted to talk about the terms of reference. Yeah, my experience for the last 12 years in the charity sector is that terms of reference has almost been a cut and paste exercise. Yes, and a checklist exercise to ensure that chairs, committee members, committee chairs, and board members have the terms of reference. Do not do that. Yeah, the terms of reference has to be adapted to the kind of meetings and the scope that you want to cover in your committee meetings or in your board meetings so that your strategy will be on track. Yeah, and it's a good practice to review the terms of reference on a yearly basis. And also if there is meeting drifts, if we're talking out of the scope of meetings, it is always good practice to look back at terms of reference and say, hey, are we on track? Yeah. So absolutely important, not just a cut and paste and a filing exercise, but something to be very proactive about. And I've touched on terms of reference, which is actually step 7, yeah, and basically understand what is their purpose and aligned it with the roles and responsibilities of your board, the composition, what the meeting should be covering, yeah. For step number 8, it's about board evaluation. Well, for the gold standards would be at least a board evaluation once a year or every 3 years. What does board evaluation constitute? It could be an evaluation of the board collectively. You could be looking at the evaluation of each individual board members, or you could even have peer reviews among your board members. A lot depends on what your resolve is and what your resources are. Okay, we stay silent for the foundational standards, but basically it would be a good practice to start looking at, even for the smaller charities. Step 9, and we're now into the actual renewal itself. There is a difference between a renewal plan and a succession plan. Yeah, a renewal plan is more all-encompassing. Where is your charity headed in the next 3 to 5 years? What's the strategy? What are the types of board members we need? How do we go about attracting them to our charities? That's a renewal plan. Now, the succession plan is really about engaging the people itself and bringing the warm bodies into the board. Yeah, so it's necessary to have a renewal policy as well as a succession plan. And finally, the last step, cessation of board membership. For some charities that I know, board members do not want to leave. Yeah, and if the chair or one of the key board members is a founder of the charity, there are perceptions that the charity will not survive without the founder. Now, again, it's time to reframe your mindset. Renewal does not mean that all these people are out of the charity. There are other options for them to still continue to contribute in a very meaningful way. Yes, and the guide will give you some tips on how to go about that. Okay? With that, I've gone through the 10 steps, and I invite Veron to continue with the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Teresa. It was very insightful. I'm sure many pertinent points that Teresa brought up will resonate with the charities. Teresa talked about the role of the board and also how to best compose a board. So, for my section, which is 3, 4, and 5, I'm really going to talk about the platinum steps on how to actually do it. And a guide, if you see the guide, it is very infographic that will actually guide you through the process as well to make it as simple, as straightforward as possible. Okay. So section 3, as you can see from here, having a board comprising of individuals with the requisite traits and characteristics, competencies, skills need not happen to happenstance. I think this is something that Teresa has also emphasized earlier on, the mindset of that you would like to have that diversity on your board for the benefit of the cause of the charity is very important. And with that, then the nominating committee or the equivalent board members, depending on the size of a board, will be responsible for the board nomination and appointment process. Of course, the responsibility in the absence of NC will be usually undertaken by the entire board or dedicated to a few key board members. So in short, there's 3-phase approach that we see in a practical way on how you can nominate and appoint your next board member, which is source, appoint, and evaluate. Okay, so the first step is looking at your board current composition. You would see the current, the immediate needs and also the future consideration. Your assessment procedures based on your current needs. The very immediate ones, there's a few key areas which is anticipated vacancies. And also the other part that Teresa also brought up is the results from your board performance evaluation. And in that evaluation, there may be certain gaps that's identified that immediately needs to be rectified. And that could be a very good source for you to know what are some of the characteristics of the new members that you need to bring in. The other one is the future consideration. What is the strategic direction that the charity is going? And are they board expertise that are currently not in the current pool of board members and need to be brought in for the future? Sorry, again, the mouse is quite sensitive, okay? So point 2, the second part is, I think it was briefly mentioned in the video about the different sources that you can actually source for potential board candidates. Internally, we talk about we can sort recommendations, And also there is a good way that you can integrate potential candidates into board activities or task force to assess the new potential board member. And also the other point that I also want to bring up is that you can take a look also at your passionate and committed volunteers. They have those who have the heart to serve the cause of the charities. For external sources, you can engage in external resources that's available. For example, the CMPL Board Match, the Council for Board Diversity, the SID Board Appointment Services, etc. Of course, attending professional networking session will also help broaden the net that you cast. Okay, and the third point, which is the shortlisting, criteria that can be used to assess and shortlist candidates. As you can see from the screen, we have listed down 7. I will not go through every one of them, but just pick up a few that we can consider in a deeper way. The skills and competency. The board or the designated committee should select a candidate that could actually add value to the function of the board through complementary core skills of the candidate. And this has to be consistent and also applicable to the charity objectives, and so that you can actually address this talent gap identified in the board composition. And diversity was talked about a lot. You can see from this guide as well. And also Dr. Gerardi has also mentioned diversity does not limit itself only to gender. There is different criteria for diversity that we should consider when looking at the board composition. The different economic background, racial, religious, gender, demographic, personal attributes. The board diversity will actually break this grouping and better represent the community it serves. Ms. Teresa mentioned about, especially for charities that look after families, children, and women. Having women on board is mission critical, and therefore it will lead to an enhanced level of governance. And the other one that I wanted to also bring up is actually commitment. The board or the designated committee should take into account the candidate's ability to commit time to the charity, and also what are the candidate's principal commitments other than the charity work. Okay. And of course, the guide will provide context for each of the attributes that we just mentioned. And the next slide really talks about when you look at the nominated members as a whole, we should consider some factors during the entire nomination process, such as overview of the evaluation criteria. What is the evaluation for the unsuccessful nominees? And what is the existing relationship that the nominees will have with the board, employees, stakeholders of the charities, or even any interests that may affect the independence of the nominee? And the board will definitely should consider interviews with the shortlisted candidates to determine for appropriateness or fit through the interaction with existing members. I talked about earlier on introducing potential candidates into the activities for the charity task force to better understand and get to know the potential candidate better. In terms of the fourth step, the board or the designated committee should provide the new board member with an appointment with list down the duties, authority, and expected commitment. This is something that may seem very mundane, but it's very important so that the board member clearly knows its roles and responsibilities, and also importantly, sharing the vision and the cause and the social impact of the charity to the new board member. Having the right passion, having the right mindset as a board member of a charity will be very important. And as soon as we are able to get the new board member aligned with how the cause of the charity is going to go will be very important. And so the vision of the future, so that the new member is able to understand the both present role as well as the investment that the current board needs to undertake, which may only bear fruit in the future beyond the horizon of his or her term. And the fifth point, the induction process should also include the scope and information covered in the 5 focus areas, as you can see from the slide. It has to be simple, clear, and emphasize on the must-haves. This is to make sure that there are clarity in the board member when they are actually on board as well. Of course, in the guide, you will see that there are foundational standards and also the core standards. This is taken into consideration of the different size of the charity and the resources that's available. So what we advocate is that, again, like what Mr. Sir has mentioned, do not cut and paste from other. You can have a baseline or some references, but more importantly, you need to customize. You need to look customize into really what you would like out of your board members and their roles and responsibilities for your charity, for your cause, and for your vision of the future. And last but not least, evaluating the performance of the board and individual board member. And this is one of the ways that you kind of look at what are the gaps, and also going into renewal and succession for the board. An evaluation may be administered through a combination of self-evaluation and peer appraisal, or as a board as a whole. And this is something that Teresa has mentioned to a certain extent earlier, so I will not elaborate too much on this. Section 5, we talk about, of the guide, talks about how can, sorry, can I just go back? Okay, section 4 talks about how to optimize the board effectiveness through the board culture and dynamics. The chairperson, we talk about certain attributes like transparency, to ensure that board members have equal access to information. That is very important. I would like to also bring up the part on welcoming diverse contribution. In some of my talks to charities, I talk about having the dominant voice and how that actually sometimes may impede contribution. So we have to be kind of cognizant of the dominant voice. We have to welcome diverse contribution. Sometimes we'll say we can agree to disagree, but we need to converge on a common vision for the charity. And that's where we build trust with each other in the board members in terms of relationship, that every one of us, when we give our views and opinions, it's really for the true cause of the charity, and it's for the benefit of the charity from the point of view of the board member. And also in terms of meetings, we think that, while there are many meetings, and some of you may sit on different charities, meetings being efficient to increase efficacy is very, very important. And then moving to the executive head, the relationship between the board and the chair and the executive head. There must be open communication and mutual trust. This will help the board to be more effective in its role, having the right access to information when questions are asked, escalating and updating the board on important strategic direction and corporate governance of the charity, etc. So in the guide, we will share more details on how to actually optimize board effectiveness through a good board culture and the dynamics with executives. Last but not least, on section 5, you can see in the guide that we talk about what can a board do. I think we hear that a lot from a lot of charities, is they cannot attract new members. It is already challenging for them to actually have a people on their board. I think importantly, what in a guide we talk about what are the things that you can do to actually increase the standing and reputation. The personal standing and reputation of existing board members can influence the decision of potential board members to join the board. The other important factor is also to showcase the results achieved by the fundraising, the programs, and the impact made on the beneficiaries and community. It is beneficial for the potential board members to then have an understanding of the charity through its cause, vision, mission, objectives, and also targets. And that, again, will help them to align that this is the charity that will be able to align with their personal aspiration to contribute and their social impact. as well. And of course, last but not least, obtaining endorsement from key opinion leaders, we have seen it does make the charity an attractive option for the potential board members, hence considering making a contribution towards it. Okay, with that, I will end my presentation and hand it over back to Jensen for the next portion of the session.
Thank you so much, Teresa and Veron. I'm sure many of our leaders now who are here today attending this webinar have a better understanding of how the board appointment guide can be used to enhance their charity's standard of accountability, transparency, and good governance. Now, I shall now move on to the panel discussion, and I would like to hand over to Kixon, who is heading the MVPC's Center for Nonprofit Leadership, to moderate the panel discussion. Over to you, Kixon.
Thank you so much, Jensen. And thank you so much once again, Teresa and Veron, for sharing the insights into the board appointment guide. Joining us on the panel this morning, besides Teresa and Veron, we also have Suhaimi. Suhaimi is also a council member for the Council for Board Diversity, as well as the Charity Council. We have some time now for the panel discussion. And one of the most visible forms of diversity is, of course, gender diversity. We have heard from the ladies this morning. Perhaps let's hear from the gentleman, Suhaimi. Suhaimi, we listened quite a fair bit about the board appointment guide this morning. And I understand that you are also part of the contributor into this guide. Perhaps you'd like to share with us why charities should get their hands on this guide and how should they use this guide purposefully. Suhaimi?
Sure, thank you for that. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm very happy to be here to join this obviously wonderful panel and to speak to so many participants. You're right that I was involved in the board appointment guide. I came to be involved because of my involvement in the Council for Board Diversity. So this started something like 2 years ago, actually, on the Council for Board Diversity. We were talking about how we could get more diversity into the boards of charities, right? And one of the things that we came about as an idea was to help with, the renewal and succession at boards. And we thought that, charities would need more help through a board appointment guide. But it so happened that the idea at the Council for Board Diversity was not a unique one. We had many like-minded players in the sector thinking about it. Of course, EY, SID, and of course the Charity Council came in to support, and we came up with this wonderful guide. Now, why do I think this is important? Back to the questions that were posed to me. I think it was mentioned before, like everyone that gets into the charity space, you start a charity or you volunteer as a board member, there's no doubt that everyone starts with really, really good intentions, right? We really want to do good. We want to help the community. There's no doubt about that. And there's a lot of work to be done. More often than not, we roll out our sleeves and we get really, really busy trying to do really good work. And time passes so quickly. We often don't have time to think about things like board composition and renewal. And unfortunately, it's really, really important to set aside that time to do it. And I think having the right structure to do it really helps. So through this guide, we hope that charities, board chairmen, board members as well, should utilize and leverage on this guide, not just to remind themselves of the need to apply their minds to the question of getting the board composition right, but also, have the right tools in order to do it, right? Don't leave it to chance, because I think there's the right structure for it to be done. And I want to talk about as well, I think Teresa was talking about step 0, right? Step 0 is to have the right mindset. I think when leaders get into charity boards as chairpersons, as board members, it's very important to realize that we're all here, no doubt to do good, but the capacity in which we're doing it is as guardians, as stewards for the charity, right? We're here to guide the charity through a, hopefully relatively short period of time, because the charity is going to go on long after we're gone. And we want to do our best, but during that short period of time of it could be a couple of years, And I think the right mindset to come in is to say, I'm not going to be here for a long time. Okay, I'm going to have a certain number of years, whether it's 6 years or 8 years on the board. It usually takes me 2 years to get to know the board really well. But, towards the end of my tenure, I want to see real board renewal. I want to see better people coming onto the board to replace me. And it's important for every chairperson, every board member to come in with that kind of mindset. And with that mindset, I think, together with tools like this board appointment guide, the charity sector can really flourish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suhaimi. We mentioned a fair bit early on as well about board composition. And there is a question in the question and answer chat that actually asks, let me just pull the question out. Yeah. So basically, minimally to form an audit com and a finance com. And this person actually asks, is that sufficient? Would anyone like to take this question up? I know that the different tiers of the charity do require additional committees. So how could the guide help, in terms of decision making, into what kind of committees should we set up? I believe this is the question.
Yes, I can take this answer because there is a module 2 under the SID charity governance program called As Good. Now, module 2 focuses a lot on board composition and board dynamics. Yes, and we get asked this question every time, especially when I touch on the structure and the sort of committees that should be formed. This question always comes up, and it always comes from the directors of the small charities who probably only have 3 to 5 board members. Yeah, when you have 3 to 5 board members, you cannot have 5 to 6 committees. Yeah, so they would always ask, what are the minimum criteria for us as far as the Charities Act is concerned? And my response would always be, at the very least, you must have an audit committee. Yeah. And if you can do better, have a finance committee. Why? Because we are stewarding public resources, public money. This is a very, very, very sensitive issue. Yeah. And I would always say at the very least, and if you are a small charity with a small number of board directors, yes, so do not take the law as black and white. Look at it from the spirit of the law. What does this mean? We are trying to create allowance for charities with good intent, yeah, but transitioning into a medium and big charity in the future. So we don't want to have so many gates to stop charities from flourishing. At the same time, if you are a larger charity with the kind of resources, then you should be forming more committees. Basically, a nominations committee is very important, yeah, because that would really zoom into the renewal and succession. Yeah, because of COVID, charities are now looking at setting up risk committees. Yeah, because uncertainty is the order of the day. So risk committees now become very important as well. Also gaining traction is HR committees. There are many charities do not have HR committees, but in the last few years, it's creeping up because your charity is as good as the quality and motivation of the people that you have. Yeah, and of course, there can be other charities depending on the sector you are. If you're in the health sector, then you would have a committee that looks into the specificity of the health sector. Yeah, so again, look at the spirit of the law and not just look at it from a compliance angle. That would be the least you can do as a director. Yeah, because board performance is not just about compliance, it's also about performance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If I may add as well on this point. So I think this point is mirrored in the Charity Code of Governance, or the Code of Governance for Charities and IPCs, where even at the very basic tier, so that means for small charities which can possibly have 3 board members, it is highly recommended as a standard that you have both an audit and a finance committee. So that really is kind of the minimum. Having said that, obviously having interacted with charities of all shapes and sizes, there's no doubt that when you are a small charity with just 3 board members, it is kind of hard to envisage the working of, a separate audit and a separate finance committee. But as Teresa was saying, obviously, the reasons why these standards are there is because, charities are handling public monies and are there for the public good. So you need to safeguard these assets. So I think the way that many small charities would typically do it, if you start as a small charity and have 3 board members, you may not at the onset immediately have an audit or finance committee, but you should work towards it. You should identify individual board members who can perform the role of an audit committee chair and finance committee chair. You may incorporate or bring on board non-board members to play the role of committee members within those committees. So those are ways in which you can plan for improving the robustness of your processes, your checks and balances on the audit and finance side, and as well, bring in committee members that can play the role of future board members as and when you expand.
Right. Thank you, Suhaimi. Let me combine a few questions together. And I think these questions are relating to the terms of reference. So basically, there are some who ask about the difference in duties between the finance com and audit com, and if the finance committee looks also at raising funds. So perhaps would anyone like to address this question?
Listen, I can take on this question. So that between audit committee itself, the terms of reference is very clear. It looks after the governance, the controls affairs, and looking at the risk and managing through the risk. Finance committee, and which is why when it comes to internal audit, a lot of the governance matters or governance, it goes to the audit committee. It holds the overall governance roles and responsibility of the board. On the other hand, finance committee have their own terms of reference when it comes to fundraising activities, financial matters of the charity. In some smaller charities, some of those a role or some of the terms of reference may overlap, but I would say that AC always has a very distinctive role. They are looking after the governance, risk, etc. While the finance committee really focus a little more on the financial matters, fundraising, etc. And some of them, from what I see, the committee actually has a reporting to the audit committee as well on some of those matters over, say, financial risk. They will actually report back to the audit committee as well. So I would say that they are not actually the same, and they do have their own terms of reference that are different with many charities that I've seen as well. Yeah.
Teresa, you have anything to add on this point?
Okay, I would always recommend that audit and finance be separate. In fact, audit should be separate from anything else, because audit's job is to audit what the other committees are doing and whether it's aligned with the overall flow and strategy of the organization. So by putting it together, you are actually removing the objectivity and independence of the audit committee. And these are the 2 keywords you want to associate with audit, right? They must be independent and they must be objective. If you put finance under it, they will never be objective about finance, no matter how hard they try. And even if they're objective or independent, the public perceptions will question them. So that would be my advice, keep it separate.
Right, thank you. Also on the similar topic about committees, there is a very interesting question regarding an executive committee or executive council or EXCO. So basically the question is, how should we go about it? And there's also another question with regards to board of trustees. Yeah, so I think there are some charities that have the EXCO and also have the trustees and maybe also have an advisory panel. So perhaps someone like to share some light about how do we manage these committees?
I can, but I'll let Suhaimi go first.
Oh, thank you. It's a tough question, really, and I think it's asked in the context, of course, the existence of different vehicles or corporate entities being used for charities. So you've got the companies limited by guarantees, which of course take the form of typical companies, and then there's these societies, and then of course to a much lesser extent there are some trusts. So I think this question about executive committees exists especially when you set up charities that are societies. right? The typical sort of constitution for societies would involve having a committee and then a management committee and an executive committee, where it would be equivalent to saying that you have a board which votes and makes decisions, but within that, there's a subset of sort of more inner circle board members that actually make the key decisions before they update the rest of the board. So it's something that's peculiar to certain societies today. Not necessarily all societies still adopt having an executive committee. Sometimes the whole executive committee, there's only one sort of committee that takes on the executive or executive role. So it really depends on the constitution that you have. I'm not sure how, the question when it say how do we manage it per se, I think it depends on how the constitution is worded, where the voting power is, how often, each committee, executive committee or otherwise meets. But essentially the executive committee is meant to perform the role of the board, right? So if you look at the Charity Code of Governance, when they talk about the board, it refers to executive committee or the board of directors or the board of trustees. So they have that same kind of responsibility with respect to governance and leadership of the charity.
Right. Thank you,
Okay,
Jaime. Teresa?
Yeah, if I may add, I think the topic of executive committee presents a polarity. Yeah, for those who are for it, they are looking at probably efficiency and alignment of board information before it gets to the general board. Now, on the flip side, it raises questions on transparency. Yeah, and so Jaime has touched on that. Yeah, to what extent has information been screened out and saved out before it gets to the board? So if you look at both sides of the coin, efficiency versus transparency, the board will have to decide whether the exco serves the mission of the board. Yeah, many charities, I noticed the chairman makes a decision on whether an exco is to be formed or not. That is not good enough. It must be a discussion with the board, and the board either approves it, disapproves it, understand what is the role between board chair, board exco, and board members in general. How does things flow between committees and exco? And if everything is transparent, it's all right. Now, this means that this must be reviewed quite regularly because board members come and go, and new members may not have approval of an exco. That is what I would suggest very strongly.
Hey, Teresa, maybe I can add to that as well. I think you raised a really good point and a slight tangent, right? On this point, whenever a charity has various committees, either supporting or within the board or executive committee, I think it becomes extremely important for all members of the board or the committees to actually require detailed minutes of what other committees are doing, right? So this is where the information flow becomes really, really important, because once you start operating in silos and not understanding what each other is doing, then there could be huge lapses in governance. And one of the things I've noticed, which many charities could improve on, is actually the standard of minute taking. So whenever there are meetings that are convened, I think it's very important to actually try and document and capture the various points, the various viewpoints that are made by different board members or committee members. Because, more often than not, you sort of look back at minutes and say, well, you record what the sort of consensus is, but you never record all the different viewpoints that are taken into consideration, which I think does a disservice, not just to the charity, but to the individual board members and all the hard work that they're doing as well.
Exactly. Well, in the last 2 years, I've sent my management team and their PAs or their secretaries to British Council to attend a minute-taking course. There is such a course, by the way. Yes.
Oh, lovely. There's a few questions about encouraging of openness, as well as who gets to decide on the renewal. And there's also another question that's linked to this. Basically, is our board only comprised of medical doctors? How could we actually steer the board to take in, legal marketing professionals? So it's about the diversity of the board as well. So yeah. Who would like to take this up? Veron has been quiet. Yes.
Well, to say in short, read the guide, download the guide. The guide will provide the various avenue and resources and the step-by-step on how to do that. and we're coming back to the question, we talked about the 2 points I brought out. One is renewal and how to attract a board members that's of diverse background. Truly, there is never going to be a one channel fit all kind of thing. If you can see from the guide, we have talked about the internal and external resources, because we know that when you need to cast the net, you need to cast it broader and wider. And each of the board members within their network, like we mentioned, medical doctors, in terms of their network, will also be limited in terms of the people that they're interacting with and their social circle. So then that's where the resources that has been put forth by the various organizations like CNPL, SID, will actually help, because they will have profiles of people who are actually willing to serve and have certain inclination for certain causes of charity that is being profiled. And these are really good resources that you can look for and to open up to these potential candidates. And then I also mentioned in my speech that you would then maybe start off by, introducing these potential candidates into the activities of the charity and board activities, etc., to get to know the candidate better. And that's how you broaden the sources of board members that will be interested or be aligned with the objective of the charity. I think Teresa brought up really a few good points on renewal early on already. So really the renewal is not just about succeeding someone who's vacating the board. Renewal is actually looking at the current needs and the future needs, future consideration based on where you want to bring the charity to, and finding those competency gap, and then knowing where the channels you can go to look for those. Really good area, which I think that some of us may overlook sometimes, is really that our very passionate volunteers who has put in their time, have the heart to serve the cause of the charity. That's really somewhere that I felt that people can actually start also looking at those who have actually spent a long time with the charity, working through with the executives and the board members. So that's also one other area that maybe we need to focus a little bit more on. Yep, I think that would be my take on this.
Okay, I can take on the medical board and the openness question. And now for the medical board, I think you do need to get to stage 0. Yeah. Basically, if your board is composed of 100% of doctors, then I would have to assume that group think happens a lot among your board members, because you're brought up the same way, you think the same way, and your view of community could be the same. So then the board runs a risk of making decisions that are pretty skewed, because people tend to think the same way. So I'm making assumptions here, it may not be true, but one of the consequences of having a board that looks alike would be groupthink. Yeah. So stage 0 would be very important. What is the mindset of the 100% medical board to change? Yeah. And once you cross the hurdle on yes, we need to change, then you can go to the guide. Yeah. To look at step 1 to step 10. Yeah. If not, go to CNPL, come to SID, you will have all the answers for you. Now, as far as openness is concerned, I think it's beyond competency, it's beyond motivation. We are stepping on a values conversation. What is important to the board? Not just what are we good at or what are we motivated by, but really, really what is important for the board. And we are getting into a values discussion here, which means the board will have to embark on a values discussion. How often does this happen? Somebody mentioned in the Q&A the need for a code of conduct. I think that's where a good starting point. Yeah, the board can come together, talk about what are the values we stand for as directors, put down a code of conduct, review it every year, the chair to regularly bring it up. And when the chair is calling out certain behaviors that are moving away from the values, the chair must call it out, yeah, in the most constructive and amicable way possible. Yeah, because if values are not addressed by behaviors that represent those values, then again, it's a paper exercise. So I would encourage you, as part of this renewal exercise, have a values discussion. Yeah. And if you don't have it, yeah, look at whether openness and trust is something you want to include in your current value system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very conscious of time, and we should end this panel off as well on time, which means that I have 3 questions left, and it's all time-based. We are talking about time limits and term limits. So basically, there's a question regarding the lapse of at least 2 years. Will that indirectly prevent the appointment of new members? And someone also mentioned that the 10-year limit is onerous. What happens to the loss of institutional knowledge? And of course, the other question regarding time is, what's the best practice to retire board members? Should this be done by the chair or the CEO? So basically the 3 questions are on term limits, time of 10 years, as well as retirement. So Jaime, maybe let's hear your views on this.
Well, let me touch on the question of the 10-year sort of term limit. Well, firstly, it's not a statutorily imposed limit, right? So, and personally, I believe it only becomes onerous if you suddenly wake up and realize that it's 10 years, right? If you've always thought about it from day one, then you plan for it, it's never going to come to you as a shock. No doubt, I mean, there is no doubt that the longer a person stays on, the greater the institutional knowledge that's built up. So you do lose something there. But on the flip side, the more entrenched a person becomes, the longer or more static a board is, there is a tendency for staleness in the ideas, lack of change. So we're trying to balance the 2 things. The ideal board is one that gradually evolves over time. It's not one that builds up to 10 years and suddenly needs to change wholesale, right? So we would like ideally for, say, for example, 25% or a third of the board to occasionally retire or resign and have to be renewed every couple of years. So there is that general evolution. There is always going to be continuity because that institutional knowledge is passed on. There is another question, I think, from Mr. Kaka Singh, which makes a very good point. For very large charities, having that kind of renewal is not a problem. But for smaller charities, especially the younger ones, the ones that are fresh, starting afresh, if you have a chairperson who is typically the founder, who starts a charity from day one and lasts 10 years, it's actually a relatively short runway because the charity is just finding its legs. So it is quite common to see smaller charities have chairpersons that last for a longer period of time. See it stabilize for 15, 20 years before it's passed on. While in the meantime, sort of seeing renewal amongst its board members. But among the bigger charities, I think having a chairperson that goes beyond 10 years is probably not good practice because you have to give opportunity for other board members to rise and take on more responsibilities.
And maybe if I add on, Kitson, I think when we had a discussion on renewal and transition, who should be actually passing on the message? I think I did talk about if everything is transparent and there is a transition plan and there is a succession plan, there's renewal plan, transparent to all board members from the beginning, it would not have been an awkward situation for anyone, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the chairman, to actually, to say that, as we all know, this is how we have, put forth this, and everybody will actually go through that process. So I think it is really echoing what Suhaimi has just mentioned. If you have something that's already planned for from the beginning, every board member is actually aligned with it, and they believe this is for the good and the best for the charity. The process of renewal and having to then let the person know that, in terms of based on the plan that we have, there will be a change of board member. It will not come as a surprise for sure, and it will not come as a contentious or awkward process for them. So I think that's really important. And I think everything then goes back into the board culture as well, the mindset. So I think that's where I think all these softer components want to come in on top of having a plan, to complement. Yeah.
If there's time, I can chip in. Okay, well, I'm a live example of a board member who retired. I recently retired as the chair of SATA ComHealth, but I planned my retirement 2 years ago with my nominations committee and with my board committee. And there was a lot of back and forth. Can you extend? What do we do about the next person? Yeah, but these are all, you know, this has to be discussed openly. Yeah, so when I stepped out, it was like, hey, nothing, there's no difference whether I'm still chairing or not, because the plan is already in place. Yeah, so if you do it well, there should be no fear or, you know, aberrations about it. And now I'm the board advisor of SATA, yeah, for as long as the next chair wants me to be. Yeah, and again, a new process has to be set up. Yeah, do I talk to all the board members, or do management still come to me? I mean, this has to be very, very clearly laid out so that the board advisor do not interrupt the work of the board. Yeah. Now the 2 year, somebody asked a 2 year, is it something, a loophole to game the system? Now let's look at it from intent. Yeah. What is your intent? If you're trying to game the system, whatever we put in place, you will still game it. We're all very intelligent creatures here. Yeah. So again, let's look at the spirit. What is the spirit of renewal? What's the spirit of bringing diversity? Does the board member who has retired 2 years ago, is he going to bring in the same level of diversity and independence? If so, yes, head held high, we bring this director back. No apologies about it. Yeah, but if that is at the expense of you really going out to search for the best board member that you have for your new board, then I would say it's a fiduciary duty that is put to question. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you so much, Veron, and thank you so much, Suhaimi. We start off the session with Dr. Gerard E. sharing with us the importance of board diversity, the board culture, and as well renewal. And of course, we've heard from Teresa, we've heard from Veron and Suhaimi in the panel discussions. I'm really, really sorry that we couldn't take more questions because time is really, really running late. And, but do keep your questions coming in as well. The Center for Nonprofit Leadership, CNPL, will definitely work with SID, EY, as well as Charity Council to provide you answers to all these questions that you will have. And at this juncture, I'm also very happy to share, how important board renewal and succession planning is and how our charities are able to use this board appointment guide as a structured framework to strengthen governance. Now, this guide will be made available to all participants after this seminar. I believe my colleagues have already sent a link. We will also send an email to remind you to please download a copy of this guide, all right? And please do use it. And a piece of good news as well. Many of you may know that the Center for Nonprofit Leadership, CNPL, and the Singapore Institute of Directors, SID, have started a new board match premium service. And this is a very specialized headhunting type of service to help charities extend the pool of qualified candidates to fill your board positions and committee positions. So at this juncture, please allow me to invite Mr. Ryan Liao, the Head of Membership and Engagement of SID, to share with you on this board match premium service. So over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Kitson. All right, let me take a look. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Ryan, and I am from the Singapore Institute of Directors. Singapore Institute of Directors is the National Association of Company Directors, and our mission is to foster good governance and ethics in corporate leadership. As most of you already know, CNPL is offering its board match service at no cost for NPOs looking for board or committee members. As Kitson has mentioned, SID is working with CNPL to offer a new service, and this is the board match premium service, which will extend the pool of qualified candidates for the available role. Now, SID has an extensive directory of directors who are willing to serve as independent directors on board. And our members have the depth and breadth of technical competencies and experiences in a diverse range of backgrounds, and many of them do have connections to potential donors as well. SID's CPD requirements and comprehensive training curriculum thus ensure that our members are developed professionally and are kept abreast of the latest development in boardroom matters. Now, some of you may be wondering, how much is this boardroom premium service? I'm pleased to inform that this service is attractively priced, very affordable. If you decide to engage SID for this board match premium service, there will be a one-off administrative fee of $150 applicable. In addition, if we do successfully place a candidate on your board or committee, there will be a success fee of $750 applicable per successful candidate place. Okay, SID has a high rate of success in placing our members to board positions. So I believe we will have something positive to bring to the table for your next board or committee member search. Right. This is the right. I'd like to bring your attention to this very attractive membership promotion that we have for you. Well, if you do sign up for a 5 or 3 year membership, you will get to enjoy a 25%, up to 25% off the MPO membership. And with this MPO membership, you will get to enjoy 2 times waiver of admin fees with $300 for the board match premium service. In addition, you will also get to enjoy 2 additional training sessions to show you want to be a non-profit director. Right, if you do sign up for 3 years, we will be giving you a Boardroom Matters box set worth $108. In addition to all this, NPOs will also get to enjoy annual training benefits as well as our membership fee savings in terms of waiver of individual membership entrance fee for board or council members. Right, this is a very attractive offer, so do sign up for membership as soon as possible before the 31st of March. Now, to sign up for corporate membership, to download the application form from our website, indicate CMPL promo on the top of the form and submit your application by the 31st of March. You can also email membership@sid.org.sg if you will need more information. For the board match premium service, do contact CMPL directly at peoplesearch@cmpl.org.sg. That's all from me today. Thank you so much. I look forward to working with some of you in the near future. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So fellow MPO leaders, there are just so many opportunities for us to find our board members. So there shouldn't be any excuse for us from today. And like all other CMPL programs, we always like to share good news at the end. So at this juncture, I'm sure many of you have received good news that the Tote Board and our government are extending this enhanced fundraising program for an additional year. And our Deputy Prime Minister, DPM Heng, has also mentioned this in his budget statement on 16 February as well. So this continued partnership will certainly help us build a stronger and future-ready non-profit sector. So here, I would like to invite Ms. Lee Seok Kun, the Acting Assistant Director, Capability and Capacity Building of the Grants Management Division of Tote Board, to share with us more on this program. So over to you, Seok Kun.
Oh, thanks so much, Kitson. Yeah, Seok Kun here from Tote Board. Yeah, so I only have about maybe 2 minutes left but just a quick one, because I'm sure many of you guys are already familiar with our Tote Board Enhanced Fundraising Program. So perhaps next slide. Yeah, so just a quick one. So because you guys will have access to these slides, and you guys can basically look at the scan this QR code and find out more about what our program does. But today, I would just want to leave you guys with 3 main messages that we would like to let you guys know about our EFR program. Yep. So next slide. Yeah, so the EFR program was originally first conceived when we wanted to help support the charities like you guys over the COVID-19, because when COVID-19 first hit, what we heard from the ground was that donations were dropping. And so therefore, originally Tote Board, who used to fund only 20%, match 20% of the funds that are raised, we have raised it up to dollar to dollar together with the government. So Tote Board comes in to match 40%, and then the government top up the EFR program so that we provide additional matching from government side to 60%. Yeah, so altogether, you'll find that the program will allow matching up to $250,000 per applicant. Yeah, I'll take the questions later. I'll leave some time for it. So basically, the good news is that the next slide. Yeah. So, and also the other thing that we also wanted to do is, because we wanted to prepare the charities to be more future ready. So we have actually expanded the EFR program to also include matching for funds that are raised on digital funding platforms. So not just the physical, because if you guys are physical fundraising, because if you guys are still holding events like charity gala dinner, adhering to the safe distancing measures and all, we'll do the matching there, and as well as on digital fundraising. So you guys will be able to provide matching when you guys go onto websites such as giving.sg and matching on your corporate websites. Yeah, and then the next slide. The three key messages that I thought I would like to let you guys know is that, like, we realized that in the past 1 year, as of 31st of December, we found out that more charities actually have benefited. In fact, this year, we've received more than 600 applications, which is double the usual number that we usually receive in the same time period. And we have like more than 80 new applicants who have never applied to our program, and they have applied here to us. And we also realized that actually 60% of the EFR program for the applications actually for pure online fundraising efforts. So we realized that actually digital fundraising is picking up. And we strongly encourage charities who have not already started doing digital fundraising to try doing that. And then the third point is, so based on our data, we realized that digital fundraising is 2.5 times more cost effective. So basically, for every dollar that's raised, the average charity only spends about 6 to 7 cents to raise that $1. So actually, we realized that we do want to try to push more charities towards trying to fundraise digitally. But of course, if you guys are also having physical event, we'll continue to be matching that. Yeah. So the next slide, please. Yeah, so because like what Kitson was saying, our DPM has announced last Tuesday that the government and TOPA will be extending our support for one more additional year until FY21. So what are the new features? Next slide. Yeah, so the two new features that we thought we want to really highlight to you guys is because most of you guys are not strangers to the EFR program. But for this new extension in FY21, for TOPBOT's portion, will be matching, there'll be a cap of 5 applications per applicant. Yeah. And then for the extension for the government matching portion, the government will be resetting the 150K cap per applicant. Yeah. So that means if you have really maxed out your 150 matching from the government last year, this coming year in FY21, and when you're planning for your fundraising program, it will be reset. So you have an extra, it's a new cap. Yeah, so maybe I'll take some questions. The rest of the other information actually more like FAQ. So I'll leave you guys to take a look at that. Yeah. So let me quickly answer some of the questions. Yes, TOPBOT matching applies to non-IPC charities as well. So as long as you are a charity, yeah, you don't have to be IPC. We understand that some of the matching funds out there only matches for IPC, but for ours, as long as you have a charity status, as well as you have to meet the other conditions, like for example, your fundraising, you need to be fundraising for charitable purposes. Yeah. So I think that's the end of the presentation. Just a quick one to basically raise awareness about our program. So please feel free to drop us a note if you have queries. Can we backdate last year's fundraising? The backdate, this one I think you're likely to have to because on a case by case, it depends on the case. Very unlikely we can do backdating. Yeah. So basically it needs to, because you need to have applied to us at least 30 days before your fundraising event starts to get TOPBOT's approval before we do the one-to-one matching. And the reason why we need all the charities to apply to us 30 days in advance is because a lot of the charities, when they go out and do the fundraising, they'll usually be telling their donors that, like every dollar you give, the government and TOPBOT will be matching another $1. So without our approval, I think it won't be right and transparent to tell them that they'll be matching. Yeah. Yes, and the government reset will be reset to the same amount of 150K. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Kitson. Yeah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Siok Koon. So, fellow leaders, indeed, there are many good news for us this year, and we have now come to the end of our Leaders Lab series for today. Before we close off, just feel free to approach any one of us at CMPL, SIB, or even SSI, all right, for all board matters or even board advisory matters. As for CMPL, we continue to support all charities to help you to strengthen your capability and capacity through these board advisory clinics offered through the Commission of Charities as well. So to everyone, I wish you the best. Enjoy your lunch please continue to stay well and stay safe. Thank you so much.